I was just ignorant to what was going on. And I thought, all right, okay, well, it's one of those hurdles that you've got to deal with in life. We'll get through it. And I remember that first session with my oncologist when I was about to start chemotherapy post-surgery. And she was like, what do you know so far? And I said, I've got this, and this, and that's what happened. And she said, has anyone talked to you about the prognosis? And I was like, no, not really. She said, well, we won't be able to cure this. And at that point, like my world just collapsed around me. So you kind of need to make every day count, and you kind of want to focus on doing all the good stuff that kind of makes you feel happy and gives you the resilience to deal with the shitstorm that you find yourself in. I really want Ride Resilience to become this inspirational library, if that makes sense. So stories from all types of hardship where the bike has really helped people to kind of come to terms with that and help them to kind of what we call ride it out, just sort of like move through that time of hardship. I want to kind of document those stories and share those stories so that people who are in a similar situation can be inspired and think, oh, actually, my situation is completely different, but that and that could work for me as well. And off they go. So,
all right, Nils Amelinckx, welcome to the Downtime podcast, man. How's things with you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. It means a lot, really, to have this opportunity to have a chat with you. I feel a little bit, I feel like a no one compared to the names you usually interview, but yeah, it means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, not at all, mate. You are more than welcome, and I'm really excited to and a bit nervous, I guess, to dig into your story, right? Because it's not an easy one for sure, but we'll work our way through. Let's go right back to the start, though. Just give us a little bit of background on where you grew up, because you're from Belgium originally, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So I grew up in Belgium. I grew up just north of Brussels, really. And lived there until I was about 12 years old. And then my dad got a job at a European school in Oxfordshire, like a 9-year contract to teach over there. So we uprooted and we all moved across. And I think everyone thought it was just a temporary thing, but when you're 12 and when you move at that point, that's when you really kind of develop yourself as an individual, don't you? So I went to university in the UK eventually, and then to be fair, I'd had enough of the UK. I thought, right, that's it. I'm moving to France. I was going to go and live in the French Alps, and registered myself with the French embassy. The Belgian embassy in France, and met my now wife over there during the first ski season. And she was from the Lake District. She was from Kendall. So at the end of the season, it was one of those things where, she had to come back. She only got 1 year out of her career, like a sabbatical. And either I came back with her or we went our own ways. And I came back to Kendall, and the rest is history. I'm still here now, all those years later.
Good stuff. Worst places to base yourself, right? If you like the outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of say it jokingly, like if she'd been from Birmingham, I'd probably still be in the Alps now, but but I shouldn't say that, should I?
Amazing. And how about the cycling side of things? Because coming from Belgium, there's a big road riding scene there, I guess, more so than mountain biking. How did you get into riding, and how did mountain biking become part of that?
Yeah, so I mean, bikes, as you know, huge in Belgium, and we always used to ride everywhere. It was kind of just out of freedom. So I remember getting a steel-framed, fully rigid 26-inch mountain bike with. I was really excited because it had V-brakes on it, so I could do really good skids on it. But yeah, we used to always sort of commute to school and bits and bobs on bikes. But it was always just part of just everyday life. It wasn't ever. I never really cycled for leisure, if that makes sense, apart from just to get to my mate's house. I really sort of got into mountain biking when I moved to the lakes, which is now 13 years ago, because I've always been really into kind of adrenaline sports, what you want to call extreme sports, etc. So I used to do a lot of rock climbing, did a lot of a huge amount of snowboarding, and mountain biking carried quite a lot of similarities to snowboarding, sort of picking your way down a mountain, that sort of feeling of speed, the adrenaline, and just and general fitness as well, actually, just getting out and about. I mean, when I first moved to the lakes, I was really excited about all the rock climbing opportunities, but I think I always dismissed people who said, "Oh, it's pretty grim up north. It rains a lot." I thought they were just chatting nonsense, only because I'd been to the lakes a couple of times, and both times it was like 30 degrees and blue skies. And as it turns out, I think it's only ever been 30 degrees and blue skies twice, and both times I probably happened to be in the lakes.
Yeah.
So I soon gave up on climbing as much because it was so weather dependent. And with bikes, I just found you could ride in all weathers, and even if it was chucking it down, you'd come back with a big smile on your face. So yeah, that really kind of took over then, and just got really passionate about it.
Amazing. And you were working in the outdoor industry as well, right? Is it you work for Leon? Is it Leon Equipment?
Yeah, it's Lion Equipment. Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. I always just sort of followed my hobbies around professionally. So when I was at uni, I was doing a huge amount of climbing. Started working for like a large outdoor retailer called Cotswold Outdoors, just to get cheap climbing kit effectively. And then when I went to France, I worked in a ski shop because I was able to sell, waterproof clothing well, etc. So I ended up doing that. And then when I moved back to the lakes, obviously there's no shortage of outdoor stores, so it's quite easy to find work. And then, I just kind of worked my way up the supply chain, if that makes sense. So eventually I ended up working for Lion Equipment, quite close to where I live. And at the time, they were the distributors for like Petzl, like a big kind of like hands-free lighting and climbing brand, La Sportiva climbing shoes. But they always did cycling luggage, a brand called Ortlieb, a German brand. And when I worked there for a number of years, because I was so passionate about cycling, one thing led to another, and effectively I became a sales rep, started just selling Ortlieb panniers, and then kind of grew a cycle division from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So you're if we fast forward a little bit, you're kind of in your late 20s, healthy, riding loads in the outdoors, living in the Lake District, on the road a bit with your work. And there were a few kind of warning signs early on, right? Tell us a little bit about those and like how that was dealt with, I guess, by the medical professionals.
Name and shame. No, not really. I suppose like my symptom was like the clearest symptom that I had was kind of like blood in my stools. Probably started when I was about 29. I remember working at a gravel event called the Dirty Reaver, and it'd been quite a long day. I sort of drove home from Kiel, and I came home and went to the toilet, and like I passed quite a lot of blood, and it was a big kind of alarm signal. And I went to the doctors, obviously, as you would, and they sort of dismissed it, said, "Oh, you've probably picked up like some sort of tropical disease or like a virus, or probably just like a temporary thing, like a fissure or something like that." But I could just tell something wasn't quite right, and in the end, I ended up asking for a private referral for a colonoscopy, because I did refer me for a colonoscopy, but I'd have to wait another 3 or 4 months, I think, because I wasn't a high risk individual. The waiting list was just quite long, so I ended up getting like a colonoscopy privately, and I was a little bit sedated, but you could sort of follow everything on screen. And I remember the guy like taking samples of something, and it was so obvious, like there was this ping pong ball size thing in my colon. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought like, oh yeah, it must be like, it could be just a bit of a growth or something, but yeah, whatever. And anyway, I came by, and Laura's my wife, we said like, let's just go out for a meal. Went out for a meal, came home, and then when we were driving home, I got a phone call from the consultant, and he said, are you driving? And I was like, yeah, I'm just driving home. He's like, all right. Oh, well, I expected you to still be in the hospital because I wanted to kind of come and, do a debrief. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a call. I'll give you a call later when you're at home. And as soon as he said that, I knew it was going to be bad news, because he obviously didn't want to tell me whilst I was driving. So, yeah, so then got home, he rang me and he said, yeah, you've got bowel cancer. You need to go back onto the NHS to have like a multidisciplinary team around you. And then the first thing they do is they put you through a CT scan to see if anything else is spread. And I noticed a couple of weird things in my liver. So they were obviously quite worried about that being like a secondary or like the cancer having spread to different organs around the body. And I completely dismissed it because I'd had a liver lesion the year before riding at Fort William. I'd come off my bike and I basically lacerated a liver. It's like, oh no, it's scar tissue. Don't worry about that. Anyway, they were right and I was wrong. So yeah, long story short, effectively it meant that I had stage 4 cancer. And then still I was just ignorant to what was going on. And I thought, all right, okay, well, it's one of those hurdles that you've got to deal with in life. We'll get through it. And I remember that first session with my oncologist when I was about to start chemotherapy post-surgery. And she was like, what do you know so far? And I said, I've got this, and this, and that's what happened. And she said, has anyone talked to you about the prognosis? And I was like, no, not really. She said, well, we won't be able to cure this. And at that point, like my world just collapsed around me because my daughter was a year and a half old at that time. My little boy was on the way. My wife was 6 months pregnant, and yeah, suddenly I was like, oh wow, this is really serious. Sort of said like, okay, well, what is the prognosis then? And she said, well, at maximum you're looking at kind of 5 years now. And at that time I was 30 years old. So yeah, it came as a big shock. It came as a massive shock, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it's a huge blow to be given. So like, where do you go from there? Like, how do you start to process that, like from a life and living perspective, from a mental perspective, before we talk about the treatment? Like, how do you sit down with your wife and work out how do we deal with this?
I don't know. In all fairness, I don't have a ready-made answer. It's one of those things where I think I just went, right, okay, well, I'm just going to have to strap myself into this roller coaster and just ride the ride through its highs and lows. I mean, there's not really a lot I can do. I'm just going to have to, go on that journey and see how things go. And, our coping strategy throughout was always just to have as much normality as possible. So, with our kids, we just carried on doing what we would have otherwise done wherever possible. Took them skiing, like taught them how to ride bikes, all of the above, just to try to sort of be normal parents and to have that normality. And I carried on working as well for as long as I could, just because, again, it kind of focused the mind. You weren't just sat at home looking at the same 4 walls, really kind of over-analysing the situation that you were in. And you know what, that actually, for us, that kind of worked quite well. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, I said to my mum, I said, oh yeah, I've had a pretty good year. And she looked at me like, you've had a pretty good year? Like, you've had chemo every 2 weeks. You've been in hospital about 3 times. You've had major surgery and you're telling me you've had a pretty good year. And it's just because I somehow managed to forget about, the really kind of terrible parts of what I was going through and remembered the good things. And it just became this natural coping mechanism. For right or wrong, I don't know. I mean, it might be that it's all stored somewhere and suddenly it's all going to come bubbling up. But so far it seems to have worked pretty well.
Do you think that approach came naturally to you, or is that something you've had to work at?
Yeah, no, I think it did actually come quite naturally to me. I think sometimes I look back and I feel surprised about how I dealt with the situation myself. I look back and I think, because there was quite a lot of cancer in my family. Like, all my grandparents have had cancer. 3 out of 4 have actually passed away as a result of cancer. And it was sort of like my worst nightmare. I always thought, like, crikey, like that day that you get diagnosed, life will end. And sometimes I look back now and I think, it's like I've actually remained a lot more positive and smiley than I thought I ever would have, when that situation did arise. So yeah, I think some of it is built in, but at the same time, some of it then becomes trained as well, because you fall into a bit of a routine and you can sort of work on that, when you find that works for you, you can really kind of focus on that as a coping strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I read a quote with you that I really liked. And you said, if you can't add days to your life, make sure you add life to your days, which is an awesome way to look at things. But I'm interested to hear, like what that means to you? How do you take that and embody that on a daily basis?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, with any kind of illness like this, you don't know how many days you've got left. So you kind of need to make every day count, and you kind of want to focus on doing all the good stuff that kind of makes you feel happy and gives you the resilience to deal with the shitstorm that you find yourself in. But I saw this amazing analogy, and it really resonated with me. And it was somebody holding a glass of water, and they said, the water is your life, effectively. And then they put a spoonful of dirt in there and stirred it all up, and it was really murky. And there's like bits floating around everywhere, and they said, like, everyone at some point in their lives are going to face some type of hardship. They're going to end up in a bit of a shitstorm. And you can spend ages trying to scoop it all out, trying to kind of get rid of all that hardship. But as a result, you're just going to be reducing the amount of days that you've got, because you're taking water out with it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And actually, the better thing to do is just to grab more life, and they grabbed a big can of water and just poured it in, and it all just kind of came flowing out. And as a result, the water became much more, or the dirt became much more diluted, and the water became a lot clearer again. It was like, at the end of the day, the best thing to do is to just add more life to deal with this situation. I thought, yeah, perfect. That's exactly how I feel about it as well.
That's a really strong way to look at it. And we're in this kind of age, I guess, where there's so many things trying to take us away from the moment, like social media is trying to get our attention, email, messages, all this kind of stuff. There's so many things that pull us away from what we should be focusing on. I'm guessing trying to live in the moment is something that you've found even more important over the last few years. Have you found ways that have helped you do that and like stay off your phone and focus on how cool life is and how amazing these opportunities and these days are?
Yeah, the first thing that kind of springs to mind is kind of focusing on photography a lot more. So I've always been really into taking pictures, but last few years started taking it a lot more seriously, partly because I wanted to document my adventures to leave a little bit of an inspirational legacy for my children to think, actually my dad was getting up to some cool stuff, and they might want to go and like retrace what I was getting up to. But also because when I was feeling poorly, as a result of either, surgery and you're recovering from that, or there's chemotherapy and you can't get out of the sofa, you've got all these amazing images that you can look back at and nearly kind of relive that time. And then, one of the things that I really sort of started to focus on was getting out for sunrise. So I call it the bonus hours, because most people, you get up, you have your breakfast, you go into your 8 hours of work, you come home, sort some bits and bobs out, have your tea, watch some telly and go to bed. And a lot of people say, I haven't got the time to do all of that, I haven't got the time. But if you've got the willpower to create that time, it's totally doable. So quite a lot of the time we'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, drive to the base of Helvellyn here in the Lake District, and then ride and push our bikes up to the summit just as the sun's sort of cresting the horizon over towards the east. And then you ride this amazing descent down one of the ridge lines, end up back at the bottom. You've done what would it be? Probably about 800 meters vertical, and you get back to work for 8 o'clock in the morning and people are still kind of rubbing sleep out of their eyes, and you've already had a proper big mountain adventure. That has allowed me to, I suppose not switch off from that daily buzz, but in a way it is switching off from that, because everyone's still asleep and nothing's really happening yet, which is great.
Yeah, good effort. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, the treatment. So you're straight into this routine of chemo every couple of weeks. What effect does that have on your body? Because you're effectively, I guess, being poisoned every couple of weeks, right? Yeah, totally. I
think it's different for everyone. Everyone reacts to chemo differently, and it also depends on the type of cancer you've got, the type of chemotherapy you're being given. So, mine I think was fairly well tolerated in the grand scheme of things. So I'd basically, I mean, I was getting, let me get this right, initially I was getting 3 different types of chemotherapy agents in the hospital, and I'd take a chemotherapy pump home for 4 to 6 hours. So it's basically it's like a little bottle that goes into, like a line that goes into your, one of your main arteries. And yeah, I mean, sickness, nausea, all of the above, you get all the kind of usual symptoms, but they give you a shed ton of steroids as well to sort of like, make your body more able to kind of deal with the poison. So it's this weird balance of feeling like really run down, but at the same time wired at night where you can't sleep. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that I ended up doing quite a lot was trying to ride my bike just to get the blood flowing, and kind of like, it felt like I was flushing the system of all these toxins. So yeah, that made a massive difference. It's a bit like, I always compared it to like a huge hangover, that kind of feeling of feeling really lethargic, feeling quite nauseous. But actually, if you get out and do things, more often than not, you come back and feel a bit better for it. But that's once I'd kind of found a bit of routine with it. I mean, initially they didn't quite get the dose right, and like my second cycle of treatment, was it second or the third? Either way, one of the first ones, I ended up being admitted to hospital because basically for about 2 days solid, I was just being sick. I had lots of diarrhea, and I lost about 1.5 stone over the course of 2 days. So I became really, really weak really quickly. And then they sort of tailored a dose, and it became a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. I heard you say initially that you wanted to kind of punish your body. You felt a bit like it had let you down. How did that manifest? Because I think the turbo trainer got a bit of a hammering, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, yeah. So I bought a turbo trainer. I always used to think, turbo is not for me. But one of the big things that helps me with kind of motivation is planning quite far ahead. So I planned this big Transalp mission. We're going to go from like Garmisch to Lake Garda, and I've been piecing everything together, but I thought, well, I need a lot of fitness. And I got this turbo trainer, put this old like a cyclocross bike on there in the garage. And it was just pretty much every night just going on there redlining, like just putting my heartbeat into 180, 190. I'm feeling proud about it. And now in hindsight, like I've read into it a bit more, it's probably one of the worst things you can do, because your body needs to be able to recover. And by running yourself into the ground, you actually make your immune system worse, if that makes sense. But it made me feel good, because I always thought, if I'm able to get fitter and get stronger, then I'm still not knocking on death's door. I'm still able to kick that can down the road. And same with just riding bikes generally, to be honest. It was one of those things where, having a goal, training for something, really kept me on the straight tracks. I mean, funny thing is, like, my mates started thinking that I was on some sort of finely tuned doping regime, to be fair, because I just started pulling away from my own climbs, and they were like, well, you're on chemo, how's this happening? But the combination of steroids, all the training, I think I was fitter during chemo than I was beforehand, to be fair, because I was just determined.
Yeah, amazing. So you got into, I guess ultimately you got into a reasonable balance between chemo and riding, and understanding how to use riding for your, not just your physical, but your physical and your mental benefit, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it was a big time. I mean, it took quite a while for me to kind of discover that. It was off the back of Kendall Mountain Festival. At first 6 months of treatment, I didn't ride my bike at all. I just thought there was too much going on to even really consider riding my bike. And I went there, and it was Martin Ashton and Andy McKenna. And Martin Ashton, obviously, hugely inspirational character. He'd just been and ridden A-Line in Whistler on this adapted bike. And Andy McKenna, he just released This Way Up, his film about how he used the bike as medicine effectively against multiple sclerosis. And I came away thinking, well, if those guys aren't letting their lives they're not letting their illnesses or disability rule their lives, then why am I letting it happen? Actually we need to just get out and ride again. So started off gradually, but then eventually found a routine. And genuinely, I think part of the reason I'm sat here talking to you now is is thanks to the bike, and partly due to actually riding so much throughout this whole, well, it's now 5.5 year cancer journey.
Yeah. Do you think that's a physical thing or a mental thing or a combination of both that's kind of effectively helped you prolong your life, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely both. I think first of all, I think they're pretty intrinsically linked. Like, I think if you're in a good place mentally, then it's easier to be in a good place physically, and vice versa. But yeah, like I said before, feeling physically fit always made me feel more resilient to be able to deal with things. And to be honest, there's been a couple of surgeries that I've had where I think if I wasn't as fit as I was, they probably wouldn't have even attempted it. But because I was pretty lean and pretty fit, I was sort of more operable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then mentally, I mean, I've written about this in a few sort of cycling publications now, but yeah, I'm a huge believer that actually riding bikes more than anything else outdoors allows me to really kind of switch off, because you've got to think of so many things like, balance, speed, will my bars fit between those two trees? There's so many things, so many decisions your mind is kind of making, that you haven't got the time to think about the challenges of daily life. And actually, whenever I went out for a ride, I felt like for 2 hours my brain could just switch off in that regard. And it was like if you imagine your brain's like a muscle, it felt like my brain was constantly cramping up, and actually being out, like riding, it allowed it to just relax for a little bit. And it was so much more capable afterwards to make rational decisions, because beforehand it just felt like it was just too busy.
Yeah. It's basically a meditation, I guess, right? It's that perfect, there's an amount of focus required, but not so much that it's stressful, but it doesn't allow your mind to drift onto other things. So it's basically, a good 2 hour ride in the lakes is a 2 hour meditation.
Yeah, completely. And I think, we're super fortunate in that the scenery is really beautiful as well. So you can ride out onto a small hill and just sort of sit there and take in the view and watch the sunset. And that's exactly like that. It's very meditative. But even I think if we just had like a trail centre, like say Cannock Chase, and you get out for a ride, I still think it's got a huge amount of similar benefits, even if you don't get those amazing views that you might get in the lakes, because you're outside. And I think that fresh air and physical exercise combined, it's so powerful. I genuinely believe that.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. You mentioned some surgeries. So part of the treatment, I guess, is more than the chemo. And I think, is it HIPEC, HIPEC? Is that like the ultimate kind of treatment for the type of cancer that you have?
Yeah, HIPEC, yeah. So when I first had my surgery in Lancaster, they effectively removed the primary tumour in the colon. But the liver lesion, it was there. It had to be removed somehow. And I started living extremely healthily in my head. Started doing a lot of research into like superfoods and that side of things, and started riding bikes a lot, and then obviously started chemotherapy, because they knew they had to do HIPEC. Because on the scan they'd also seen, and during the surgery they'd also seen that the tumour had actually gone through the bowel wall and then was just floating around there were cancerous cells floating around in the abdominal cavity, and they'll just nestle in place and sort of stick to organs. So what they needed to do was this surgery called HIPEC, where effectively they open you up from your sternum to your pubic bone, top to bottom. They effectively unpack all your organs like a suitcase. They cut away any disease that shouldn't be there, both in the membrane that surrounds your organs and sort of like stuck to the organs itself. And then they effectively bleach that cavity with like a hot chemo solution. So the chemo is about 40 degrees, it's heated, which is too hot for the cells to survive. And it's a really, really strong chemo. Like if you had it intravenously, you'd be dead. It's really, really strong stuff. But yeah, you basically lie there for there's different amounts of time depending on the chemo they use. But I want to say it's something like 40 minutes. The surgeons just go and have lunch, and you just lie there when all this hot chemo is being pumped around you. And then when that's done, they drain it, put all your organs back into your abdominal cavity, and then put you back together. So anyway, long story short, I wasn't eligible for it because I had this lesion in the liver, and the worry was always that if they opened me up and tried to attack what's called the peritoneal disease, so it's the disease in the membrane that surrounds your organs, then at that point, because you have to come off chemo both before and after surgery, it allowed the lesion in the liver to grow too quickly, and for it then to become inoperable in the liver. So they said, well, we can't do it. But with all the kind of superfoods and riding of bikes and bits and bobs, I ended up going to Blackburn, and they were going to try to ablate it. So effectively put like a hot needle into the middle of this little lesion and zap it. And they were like scanning and looking around and couldn't find it. And they're like, can't find it, it's gone. So apparently that's pretty unheard of, that a bowel cancer liver lesion disappears with just chemo. So that's what happened. And then that made me eligible for this HIPEC surgery. So in I went and had that done. And then I was all right for a while. I was recovering. I started riding bikes again. And then eventually a scan showed that some of the liver had developed a new little lesion somewhere else. There was a little mini tumour that sort of popped up, and I said, right, we'll go in and we'll attack that now. So they removed part of my liver, and it's a weird one because it's a surgery that I often forget about. It's one of those things like pretty major, but in the grand scheme of things, it feels minor. So they chopped part of my liver out, but during that operation, they'd noticed that the peritoneal disease was back as well, but it was really, really small. It was too small for it to be identified on the scan, but you could see it when they opened me up. So during the surgery, they rang the HIPEC surgeon and said, what do we do? And he said, right, well, do your liver surgery and we'll do HIPEC again. So a year after the first HIPEC, I had HIPEC again. And it still hadn't really worked, to be fair. But then it was the only possible surgery that potentially could be curative. So some people, to be fair, will be cured off the back of a HIPEC surgery, and they only do it in two places in the UK. So it's either in Manchester or it's down in Basingstoke, and that's it. Like if neither of those hospitals want to touch you, then you're out of luck. So I was pretty fortunate in that regard. And then the unfortunate thing is with repeated surgeries and always cutting open the same thing, you end up with like quite a lot of scar tissue and things sort of bonding together that shouldn't. So I ended up with like a partial bowel obstruction because all this scar tissue just started getting quite knotty. And about a year and it's nearly 2 years ago now, crikey. Yeah, nearly 2 years ago now, I ended up with surgery where they bypassed some of the bowel that just wasn't functioning properly anymore because it effectively couldn't contract. It was sort of stuck together with the scar tissue. So then now I've just got a very small bit of short bowel left, which has to try to absorb everything from fluids to foods, etc. And that's quite tricky. That's a challenge in its own right.
Are you like using additional drugs and things to help the body do that then? Because I'm guessing that's quite a challenge, right, to get everything you need.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I jokingly once did a little reel where I basically put all my medication in like a cereal bowl, added milk, and then sort of like ate it like that because there's so many of them. It just looked like I was having Cheerios. But yeah, I mean, I need to take 16 loperamide tablets a day, which is loperamide is like crikey, what's the I can't think of the famous medication for diarrhea. You might be able to think of it, Chris. It doesn't come to me now.
It doesn't come to me.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. 16 of them, and then a load of codeine as well, just because codeine sort of just calms the gut down, and it's all there just to sort of slow things down. But yeah, one of the issues that I find trickiest now is when you drink fluids. Like I can't drink plain water because actually it doesn't absorb that easily by your small gut. And if you just drink loads and loads of water, all that happens is you just flush all the nutrients out of your gut with it. So
Yeah.
I've now got to basically just have like sports drinks, adding salt and sugar to water and things like that to try to kind of absorb it a little bit more. I have a lot of diaurolite as well, which is horrible. It's like Ribena with salt water. It's disgusting, but it does make a big difference. And that's all there to just sort of slow things down a little bit.
Amazing. So I'm guessing the recovery from something like the surgery is more challenging, right? You're going to be out of action for longer when it comes to riding, and you start to lose, especially with the dietary challenges, you start to lose muscle mass and fitness, huh?
Yeah, fully. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. At first I thought I can bounce back from this pretty easily, but yeah, a lot of the time, like the first Hypec, I was in hospital for 8 days, and for the first 5 days I was pretty much bedbound. And then the second surgery was a bit longer, third surgery was longer still. And then when I had this kind of bypass operation, like when they bypassed part of the gut that wasn't working properly anymore, I was in hospital for quite a while. And yeah, you come out feeling pretty weak. So I ended up having to embrace the life of Ebikes, to be fair, because I just couldn't keep up with my peers anymore. They're all just sort of fit and well 30-year-olds, and off they go up the hill, and I just couldn't keep up. So I ended up buying one of those sort of semi-fat e-bikes, like a super lightweight e-bike, to be able to keep up with my peers, which has been great, to be honest. It's actually made me recover quicker as well as a result.
Interesting. Yeah, they are amazing tools. What was your view on e-bikes then before you went to the dark side? I'm guessing is the way you were looking at it.
It was mixed. Like, in a way, I often think, you know what, if it gets more people out, great. That's, if we want to get more people riding, perfect. But unfortunately, there's definitely the erosion side of things, where you're riding a heavier bike, and in the same amount of time, you can basically do the same loop 3 times. And these bikes are heavier. Riders are sometimes, unfortunately, a bit heavier as well. Part of the reason why some of them get an e-bike. And you notice that erosion just suddenly sort of like speeds up a little bit. And I don't think they always give cyclists a good name, if that makes sense. Yeah. Certainly in the mountain bike world. So there's that. And then part of what I really enjoy about being in the mountains is that kind of distancing from all things, like all the electronics and side of things. I mean, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm walking around with a camera and stuff like that. Excuse me, but that hum of an electric motor in the hills just didn't really sort of seem to fit right with me. Yeah. But then I had the choice of like, well, either, you embrace it and you start riding one of those, or you might not ride for quite a while longer. And we all know what that does to your mental health and, physical health as well, to try to get back into it. So yeah, I took the plunge, and to be fair, I've actually become more of an advocate for e-bikes than anything else. I actually think, on the grand scheme of things, I think they're a real enabler for a lot of people, and certainly for kind of like, commuting and stuff. I just wish we had better infrastructure, and more people could leave the car at home. It'd be absolutely brilliant.
It would be incredible, yeah. Was it an obvious choice then to go for like one of the lighter weight e-bikes rather than the sort of full fat style, like big battery, big torque things? Yeah,
I mean, part of the reason was because I was kind of conscious of the erosion side of things. Yeah. But then the other side was here in the lakes that there is still quite a lot of pushing and shouldering of bikes. And I thought, well, if I've got a 25 kilo e-bike, there's no chance of me shouldering. That's like walking up a hill with a bag of cement, effectively. So yeah, that kind of like lightweight category was perfect for me. Also partly because I couldn't afford like an analog bike and a full fat e-bike. I just wanted one bike that could kind of do both. And I suppose the unfortunate thing is, like, you could argue they don't do either properly, but actually I think they've got their place. I think they give you a bit of a boost on the uphills, but they are definitely more playful than a full fat e-bike. They're a little bit more nimble on the trail still, which is perfect. Yeah.
What have you chosen then?
So I started with a Levo SL initially, and then because I work in the bike industry, we seem to just try to change bikes every year, just keep things fresh and try different things. So currently I'm on an Orbea Rise, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think the Orbea Rise, even though they're very, very, very similar, Yeah, if I had to review both back to back, I'd probably pick the All Bay Arise just because it's a little bit more contemporary in terms of geometry.
Yeah.
And I think I prefer the Shimano motor as well to the special one. But hey, there's so little in it. They're both great bikes, to be fair. They've been good.
Yeah, awesome. And so cool that it's giving you the opportunity to get out there and ride, and also, like you say, to get back on a bike sooner after any treatment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, initially, when I wasn't able to ride far, they allowed me to carry a little bit more in the way of kind of camera kit. So I just go out with friends and just say, well, you ride the same thing over and over again. I'll just take some photos, and we'd get some of them published. So it was really nice to be able to, kind of ride slightly differently with them. They've been a real enabler, real kind of smile inducer for sure.
Definitely, yeah, awesome bits of kit. So I first became aware of your story it would have been at Bike Night at Kendall Mountain Festival.
Oh, no way.
Where you showed a film that you'd made called Rider Resilience. Would that have been 2019?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, correct. I was thinking back of that earlier. That was the OG of the sort of story of Rider Resilience. And that's what made me actually think we could do more with this, to be fair. Like the reception that got, as you'll probably know, at Bike Night, made me realise actually this seems to resonate with a lot of people, and we should sort of try to spread this message a little bit further and a little bit wider.
Definitely. Well, if we back up a little bit though, what made you decide to share your story in the first place? Like, how did that first Rider Resilience film come to be?
So a local mate of mine, Ben Gerrish, he organises, or he used to organise, a really informal gathering of like local riders, local creatives called One More Brew. And we'd get a couple of kegs in from a local brewery, and it was basically an opportunity for people to showcase their little shredders to their mates without it sort of just going onto YouTube. We'd have a few pints and, chew the fat. And the first one I did was basically the reason for me to just start riding again. It gave that kind of that purpose to getting out with some mates. I wasn't able to ride as fast or ride the same level of tech that they were, but I was able to kind of document it, and we made a fun little film. And then from that I thought, well, actually the next one I'm going to do like a solo film and talk more about how bikes have helped me recover from various surgeries, and how it's helped me, or how they help me on this journey currently that I'm on, because there was a couple of other friends in this area who had cancer as well, and bikes had made a massive difference to their recovery. So it was sort of telling my story and then linking those two stories into it as well. So that got shown at One More Brew the following year, and I got like this standing ovation. I completely wasn't expecting it, because there was some stuff there which was, like pro grade, really, really well produced stuff. And then there's mine, which is more kind of story based, self shot on a tripod, very static, but quite a heavy story linked to it. And it was so well received. And Ben at the time, he was part of the team who did who curated the films for Bike Night. So he came to me and he said, "Hey, look, we're keen to put it into Bike Night. Would you be up for that?" And the rest is history. It kind of went on to the big screen at Kendall Mountain Festival, and then chatted with Rob Warner and Lee Craigie about it. And I came home and I thought, wow, I never expected that reception from something so simple. It was great.
Yeah, and it's a big crowd, right? I don't know how many people fit into that venue, but there's a lot of people there, and the reaction was insane. Like it definitely it gave me the feels. It must have been insane for you to be there in that room.
Yeah, the good thing is you've got these bright spotlights on you, so you can't actually see the audience. But I think there's just shy of 1,000 people in that hall. So it's a lot of people, and a lot of real kind of industry bigwigs as well. So it's not just like a load of mates. It felt like pressure was on. I mean, heck, Rob Warner was there, so yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So how do we get then from that night, that film, to launching Rider Resilience kind of as it exists today? Tell us a little bit about the process from then till now.
To be fair, I parked it initially because I was so busy with work, and I was really keen to, you know, get out and ride and spend time with the family wherever I could. I thought, given the reception at bike night, this thing could explode, and I just haven't got the time at the moment to, you know, work a full-time job, get home, close one laptop and open the next and start on that. And I didn't really want to do a half-assed job of it either, if that makes sense. I didn't really want to have something which just wasn't that active. It was just like one post every 3 months or so. So I kind of parked it, and then it will have been last autumn. I was having a chat with my oncologist, and I'd come back from France with quite a lot of sort of sciatica pains in my left leg. And I was on chemo at the time. I was on, you know, tablet-based chemo when I was out in France. And yeah, when I came back, I was in agony. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I couldn't ride bikes. I couldn't really sort of sit still or stand or lay down. I didn't really know what to do with myself. And when they scanned me, they found there was like a secondary tumor which was pressing on that sciatic nerve quite high up where it leaves the spine. And it actually, it made the spine, that little hole around there where the nerve comes out, made it really brittle as well. And it was one of those questions that I normally always shied away from, but I thought, this doesn't sound good. I'm on one of the last types of chemo available for my type of cancer. I knew that. And I am on chemo at the moment, and this thing is still progressing. It basically means that it's not reacting to the drugs anymore. Yeah. So I said to the oncologist, you know, look, what are we looking at now? Because initially they said 5 years, and I haven't really got a clue what we're looking at, and I really kind of want to plan my life. And he said, right, well, we probably need to start talking in terms of months. And again, like my world just kind of collapsed around me, because, you know, when they said 5 years, I thought, yeah, that's hellish, but 5 years, I'll just push that away for now, push that away. And suddenly it became a lot closer. And I went to work and I said to the directors there, look, this is the situation that I'm in. You know, I love doing what I do, but equally I've got other things that I want to achieve in life. And you know, Lion is an employee-owned business, and it's very much kind of like, it's got a real kind of family feel to it. So they just turned around and said, look, you've got to do what makes you happy, if that makes sense. And we will do what we can. You know, obviously anything you can do for us, great. But if you have a sunny morning and you think, I want to go and ride my bike, go and ride your bike. You only live once. And it was huge because, like, I mean, I've always been indebted to them, to be fair, anyways. Ever since I was diagnosed, it's been great. But it gave me the opportunity to focus on rider resilience and not have to worry about, you know, huge cuts in pay or anything like that. So, so we started rider resilience proper, I suppose.
Amazing. God, tell us a little bit then about rider resilience, how you see it, and what it is you want rider resilience to achieve, to go on to be.
Yeah, totally. So rider resilience to me is, I want it to be, well, first and foremost, a source of inspiration where people can be reminded that actually riding your bike can be as effective as like conventional medicine, you know, actually not just for physical hardship, but also, you know, mental hardship. People are going through some tough times. I think given how much bikes had kind of given me, I wanted to kind of give back to the bike and the wider industry and the wider community. Yeah. So I wanted to build this kind of community spirit where, you know, we draw on that kind of camaraderie of the bicycle industry, and we support one another when we're going through times of hardship, because like I mentioned earlier, at some point everyone's going to go through some tough times, whether it's, you know, grief because of bereavement or whatever else. It is just a given in life. And if we all just remember to encourage each other to get out on a bike and to ride, it's so good for that kind of mental real estate. It's an easy one to kind of sideline and think, oh, I don't want to ride my bike today. But when you do go out and you come back, you feel great for it. So yeah, I really want Ride Resilience to become this inspirational library, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
Stories from all types of hardship where the bikers really help people to kind of come to terms with that and help them to kind of what we call ride it out, just sort of like move through that time of hardship. I want to kind of document those stories and share those stories so that people who are in a similar situation can be inspired and think, oh, actually, my situation is completely different, but yeah, that and that could work for me as well. And off they go. So that's kind of one part to it. And then the other part is for us actually to provide grants to movements that are kind of close to our heart. So we sell merch. We obviously were looking for like corporate partners who we can work with so that we can provide grants on an application basis to movements that actually promote building of resilience and get more seats on saddles. Things that in general just will make the world a better place. And yeah, the whole concept is like, it's like, well, what can we do to improve our little community, our world around us, if that makes sense? What can we do to all pay it forward and to pay back into something that's given us all so much joy, if that makes sense, which we sometimes just take for granted. But if you think about it, the amount of great experiences we've all had collectively, we're indebted to the bike and we're indebted to the industry, we're indebted to the community. So it's a way of paying back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100% it makes sense. How has the response been so far? Because you launched in, what was it, October, November last year?
Yeah, I think looking back at that first post, it was late September. I just put a post up saying like, I've just finally got round to making a website. Here it is. Be cool if you guys could spread the word. And it went absolutely viral. Like I just saw it pop up everywhere. And to be honest, I wanted it to be a soft launch because I hadn't sorted a web shop out. There was nothing to buy. There was no stories. There was no YouTube channel. It was very much like to my mates, oh, by the way, guys, I've made this website, and they shared it, and you know how it goes. Like something just goes nuts on social media, and I mean, it was huge seeing that, and then stories started flooding in straight away, which was amazing. And then, bit by bit, we added to it. So initially I thought, right, what can we do? Because a lot of people were asking, how can we help? How can we support what you're doing? So we just created a simple kind of donate page. And then we're working on the merch. Then we sort of launched that. And then we launched a YouTube channel. And it's kind of grown from there. But yeah, no, the reception's been huge. And like the stories that have been coming in, especially, have been really, really touching. People sharing some really personal stories where the humble bike has made a massive difference to them, and even how like some of the stories that we've already told have made a massive difference to people, which is huge. It's exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, despite this, I think we're just focusing on the UK largely. Like I think we've had a bit of visibility over in the US, but that's the next step really. Is trying to kind of create a bit more visibility over in North America, particularly. So we're working with a guy called Jacob Gibbons, who I think has been on the podcast before, actually, from Aspect Media. We're going to create a rider resilience film Mark II, like a proper
this was coming.
And push that out globally with like a proper press release, and create a little bit more global momentum, if you like.
Amazing. And you've got Seven Mesh, I think, supporting as well, who have also supported the podcast. Yeah,
totally. So, the nice thing with working in the industry is you end up knowing so many people, and you've got that kind of personal rapport with a lot of folk. So I've never met TJ, the owner, in the flesh face to face, but I've spoken to him via Zoom like this, on numerous occasions. And when he found out I was poorly, because he didn't know initially, when he found out I was poorly, he kept reaching out to me out of the blue, just saying like, how are you doing? How's things? La, la, la. And then when I launched Rider Resilience, I just got this email saying like, we're 100% behind it. Like, let us know what we can do. We're 100% behind this.
Nice.
And it's great because, Seven Mesh is a brand that we work with at Line Equipment. But I'm a massive fan of what they do anyway, with me coming from that kind of outdoor background. And I'm a proponent of having good kit anyway at the best of times. So it's a really nice fit, to be honest. I think they're a real adventure enabler.
Fantastic. And the support of Kendall Mountain Festivals continued as well, right? You were like the charity partner for the bike night this year.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So this year, they asked me to be their like nominated charity. So you end up doing like a raffle. The interval, we had a little pop-up stand there selling some merch at the entrance, which has been really nice. And then, locally as well, off the back of that, there's an event called the Gen Ride, which takes place on an annual basis. So that's in memory of the late Jen Hill, who passed away due to lung cancer back in, I want to say 2015, but I might have got that wrong. But she was a deputy editor at Single Track Mag. And obviously she was a really, really keen cyclist as well. So Gen Ride still happens. And every year, some of the proceeds are donated to the hospice where she passed away. And then the other half goes somewhere else. So this year that is Ride Resilience as well, which is great, because I'm a passionate mountain biker, always have been. But, the bike industry is far bigger than just mountain bikes. And I'm really keen to kind of step into the world of gravel and perhaps road as well, just to, share this message beyond the kind of gravity orientated side of the sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a story that can resonate with anyone that appreciates bikes, I think. So it makes a lot of sense. You've got a podcast channel as well now, telling some of these stories, both on YouTube and across all the podcast platforms, right?
Yeah. That's I mean, initially I thought I'd do like a YouTube channel, because you can do interviews like this, but actually, I mean, if I look at myself, a lot of the time I end up listening to things rather than kind of sitting down and watching stuff, because I listen to a podcast whilst I'm driving or doing the washing up or whatever. And I figured actually it's a small amount of extra work to make a YouTube episode into a podcast. You just sort of need to do a small little re-edit. But it's just another avenue to sort of share people's stories. I mean, Chris, I must say it's given me a newfound respect for podcasts. It's a huge amount of work that goes into it. All in all, it's no mean feat. It's a big job. So yeah, fair play to you.
Yeah, you've had some good guests though, eh? Like I was watching one with Martin Ashton. You've had James Anderson on, who's been on this podcast as well. Like, is there plans for more? Because like you say, it is a chunk of work, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Like initially I thought I'll do one every week, and that soon fizzled out. I mean, with everything that's going on in my life, my energy levels very much dictate how much I can do with it at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, we've got a huge number of guests that I'd love to interview in the pipeline, and it's just a matter of kind of like slotting that in. And I mean, the original plan, to be fair, was to actually go and meet people and go out for a ride with them, and maybe like just have two wireless mics and sort of chat whilst you're riding, and kind of have some of the sounds around you as well, like a tire rolling on the gravel and things like that. But that takes so much more planning still, that's not really happened that much yet. But yeah, no, we've got some plans to do more with it. And I always say to people as well, anyone listening, if they've got a story that they want to share, they're more than welcome to reach out, because we'd love to have that chat. We've got those, we've got the blog as well. If people prefer things in written form, don't want to jump on a podcast or a video interview like this, because it's incredible how many people you will touch by sharing your own story. And it will, to a degree, rely on that to happen for it to keep moving forward, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So if people want to send stories in, like what's the best way to get in contact?
Just drop us an email, to be fair, info@rideresilience.org, or just use the contact function on the website. Direct message on Instagram is fine as well. So there's a few of us working on the Instagram side of things. It's not just me interacting with the community just by myself. But yeah, just reach out to us, and then we can take it from there. That's probably the easiest thing.
Nice one. Yeah, I'll make sure that I put links in the show notes to kind of everything we've talked about. So I mean, you touched on this. You can't do everything. You can't do it forever. How do you make sure that this work continues after you're no longer able to do it? That's a kind of blunt way to put it, I guess. But.
Yeah, that's the big question. I think, I mean, I'm quite happy in the sense that, you know, my story, my own personal story, is only the backbone to Ride Resilience. It's the story which kind of founded the movement, but I never wanted the movement to be all about cancer. I didn't want it to be about me either. I wanted it to be about, you know, how riding bikes fosters resilience and allows you to deal with difficult situations. So I would be more than happy if somebody else took over the reins. And I often look at, there's a sort of similar charity in the climbing world called Climbers Against Cancer. And the founder sadly passed away a while back, but it's still going from strength to strength now. And yeah, secretly, that's sort of my hope, that actually this is a bit of a personal legacy project where actually I'm just planting the seed and it can grow into something much bigger. I've set it up as a community interest company, so it's never for profit anyway. You know, yes, we can pay people salaries if needs be, but any profit that's made gets either reinvested into the business or will be donated to other charities around us that actually are close to our core values. But yeah, I mean, I genuinely hope that actually, you know, there are people out there who think, actually, yeah, I've got a couple of hours a week and I've been looking for something that really kind of resonates with me, that I'd like to kind of put some time into. And we can make it more of a collective exercise, you know, rather than it just be, you know, me on the story side of things and then, you know, three of us on the social media side of things. There's actually more of I suppose like a Wikipedia effect where we're all kind of contributing, if that makes sense. And actually, to be honest, you know, being blunt about it, if I only have months left to live, then I think we probably need somebody to do the day-to-day running sooner rather than later. So there's a bit of a handover. We can have, like, you know, our goalposts are clearly defined, and they can take over the reins. And I would have absolutely no qualms with that whatsoever. I think that's what's really needed for it to be in existence long term.
Nice. So you're open to people coming to you with thoughts and ideas that want to get involved, right?
Totally, absolutely. I think, you know, across the board, whether it's like merchandise, whether it's stories, whether it's things that we could do better. Yeah, at the end of the day, you know, this is just a passion project, but I've got no real background in doing any of this. So, you know, even from the sort of the whole sound engineering side of things, of podcasts and stuff, like actually trying to make it sound good. Like I feel like I'm spending a huge amount of time watching YouTube episodes of how to make things sound better. And I feel like I could be more proactive elsewhere if there was just a preset that I could drop in. Like, oh, there's a preset for Nils's voice, pop, and there it goes. But yeah, so anything like that. I mean, there is a page on the website in terms of how people can support Ride Resilience. Okay. And it's anything from just, you know, basic share this page with your friends all the way to, you know, contributing time, etc. And you know, sharing some of people's skill sets to make it bigger and better.
Brilliant. So I get, maybe we've already covered this a little bit, but what would you ask from people listening to this podcast, whether that's riders or whether it's people from brands and within the industry? Like, are there certain things that you would ask them to go and do, or that you particularly need
in terms of help with Ride Resilience, or in terms of
in terms of supporting the movement, I guess, and then also specifics in terms of helping Rider Resilience kind of move to the next step?
Yeah, totally. I suppose for you know, everyday riders, the biggest thing is to spread the message of Rider Resilience. So one of the big things that I was hoping for is that, and it seems to be happening, people wear their merchandise with pride, and they really want to kind of associate themselves with the brand. So that will help massively, absolutely sharing the page on social media, little things as well to kind of please the algorithms, like subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even if you don't watch every episode, it doesn't really matter. It'll help us to kind of pop up in Google rankings and YouTube rankings a little bit more. So it's those little things that people can do. Obviously sharing their stories with us, or if they know someone who's got a really kind of like a story worth telling, getting them in touch with us, that would be huge as well. Kind of making those suggestions will be massive. Then, like I said before, if people have got particular skills in terms of like the more technical side of things and they want to help out, by all means, please do. It'd be huge. I mean, even just somebody creating like an awesome sticker sheet or something like that, that just with like some top tube stickers that are motivational would be amazing.
Okay.
And then in terms of brands, that like corporate sponsorship, I think long term hopefully will be a big revenue stream for Ride Resilience. It'll allow us to do more. And certainly from my work at Lion, I'm starting to notice a change in how brands allocate their marketing budget, and that like the advocacy budget is becoming more and more important, actually kind of paying back into the community and doing something for the greater good, rather than just like putting more adverts in a magazine and trying to sell more stuff. It's about how can we come together and make the world a better place. So, if there are any kind of brands listening who think, actually, this is great and I really want to get behind it because it fits with our own aims, then by all means, please get in touch. I think as the channel and the movement grows, there's a huge number of ways in which we can, give brands exposure and some return on investment. But in return as well, it'll give us exposure. Like if we're doing stuff and they're sharing it, they've got a much bigger audience than we could ever dream of having. So it works both ways massively. Yeah,
100%. Awesome. Good stuff, man. Well, we've talked about rider resilience. Let's kind of bring it back to you a little bit. How are you doing at this point? So we're beyond the 5-year point. They told you 5 years. You've beaten that. Like, how are you feeling? Are you still able to ride? Like, how are you doing physically? How's life, right?
That is a big question. I feel like I need to touch some wood before I say anything. But no, at the moment, things are relatively stable, I think. Okay. I mean, with me having such a short bit of bowel left, like absorption's always difficult. And recently, like my iron levels were pretty low. So if you have low iron levels, then you've got a low red blood cell count as well. So you carry less oxygen in your blood, and that just makes you more tired. It makes it harder to, ride a bike, etc. So I really felt that. But it wasn't until recently that I actually figured out what was causing it and started taking iron supplements, but they only kind of do so much. So that's been a little bit tricky. I've got a scan first week of April, so I'll have a good degree of scanxiety to go alongside with that, as always. But basically, I mean, in the liver, there's a couple of ping pong ball sized tumours which they're not going to operate. They're there. They were fairly stable last time. We've got the thing in the pelvis which they tried to zap with radiotherapy in December, and to be honest, like, I can sit now. I wouldn't have been able to sit for this amount of time this time in December, so that's made a massive difference. But it's unlikely that will have got rid of it altogether. So at some point, that's probably going to start kind of building up a bit again. And then you've got to just kind of tailor your pain medication a little bit. And I mean, I was talking to Steve from Can't Quit Cartel, and turns out we share a few bits of medication. We've got the same sort of meds. And he warned me. He's like, "Oh, mate, pregabalin, no, that stuff is dirty. You don't want to. You want to be careful with that." And he was completely right. Like, you go onto it, and actually, it just makes you feel so detached. It's like a nerve painkiller, and it works on your brain rather than on your nerves. Right. So I just felt so spaced out. I remember going up to Aberdeenshire to ride for a weekend, and it felt like Nils was walking over there, and like my thoughts were here, but it was like I could see myself in like this weird dream state, because it takes 2 or 3 days for your body to adjust to like a change in dose. but anyway, all of that stuff is fairly stable at the moment. With me having better energy levels now that I'm back on these iron supplements, I've been riding a fair bit more, to be honest. And also, like, the weather just starting to improve makes a big difference as well.
Yeah.
You know, just in terms of the motivation to get out when it's freezing or horizontal driving rain, it's quite difficult to get stoked to go out and ride, isn't it? So I've really enjoyed just leaving my camera at home and just riding trails, like just getting back into it, trying not to overthink things and trying to find a little bit of flow again. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I get frustrated because I definitely don't ride as well as I used to. But then you have to remember, but I'm still riding, so what does it really matter in a way? You know, we're still riding fairly technical trails. Yes, I'm not going as fast and may not be riding as well, but we're still riding. And fundamentally, that's what it's all about. And I always think when I've been out for a ride, like I'm still alive. I still feel alive. I'm still living. I'm not knocking on death's door. So it just makes me feel awesome.
That's incredible. Yeah. Have you found that time has an elasticity to it? Like, because in your position, I guess slowing down time is a good thing. Have you found ways to do that? Because there's definitely moments in your life where time seems to go really slowly and others where it seems to fly by.
I don't know if you've done really good research, Chris, or if you're just, on completely the same wavelength as me. But yeah, I absolutely think that riding bikes sometimes can give you the perception that time slows down a little bit. It's a little bit like I know you've got a little girl. Yeah. To them, a year is like a lifetime, isn't it? It just feels so long.
Yeah.
And I always thought it's because 1 year as a percentage of their lifetime is a big percentage, and that's why it seems so long. But I did a bit of research into it, and apparently it's because they're getting so many new kind of experiences and, sensory input. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what, it makes your brain work really hard to process all of that. And that's what gives things the perception of time slowing down. It's a bit like if you nearly have a massive off on a bike, it sometimes feels like you're going into like a Matrix style slow motion. Yeah. You just see yourself kind of flying through the air and you think, oh, this isn't going to end well. And it's the same thing. It's your brain just suddenly getting this adrenal shot and just going into overdrive. And as a result, time sort of slows down. So I find that when I'm riding bikes and you're trying to do lots of things like, picking your line, balancing, etc. Sometimes it does feel like, I don't know, like even though you've only been riding for 2 hours, it feels like you've discovered and seen a lot more in those 2 hours than, 2 hours sat at home doom scrolling on Instagram would have done, if that makes sense. So 100%. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for it. And I genuinely don't know whether that was just me or whether other people experience that as well. But yeah, I often think, if you want to make your weekend count, just go and ride loads. Like just get out on the bike and ride some awesome trails, and you'll feel like you get a lot of bang for your buck your weekend.
Definitely, man. That's a nice place to start to wrap it up. We've got our final 4 questions that we've asked pretty much everyone. So we'll hit those up. First of those, if our listeners had £150 to spend to improve their performance on a bike or to improve their enjoyment of riding a bike, perhaps, what would you recommend they go and spend it on?
Oh, good question. You know what? I'd actually say, and I know it's going to sound a little bit biased with my connection with 7Mesh, but I'd actually say get a decent waterproof jacket, because we all go and spend 5-6 grand on a bike, no problem, and then we ride around in a bin bag effectively, and we're just uncomfortable, sweaty. A lot of people don't even bother with the waterproof anymore because they're riding around in some rubbish PU coated stuff which just doesn't breathe. And genuinely, one of the biggest things that I've found when I started riding with proper quality kit is that you can effectively get out in any weather and feel really quite comfortable, and it just opens up so many more opportunities. And plus there's a safety aspect as well. If you're riding in high mountains, actually if you have an injury or if you have a mechanical, being able to put a shell on quickly to break that wind, it just stops you from getting too cold quickly, and then when you get back on the bike, not being able to feel your brake levers because your hands have sort of seized up. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for it. I know normally people would say coaching or something like that, but yeah, genuinely I think clothing is massively undervalued still in the mountain biking world.
For sure, and if it enables you to ride bikes more often in a more comfortable way, then I'm behind that. It's a good answer. Right, next one. If you could wind back the clock and sit down with yourself at age 16, what advice would you give him?
Start riding mountain bikes.
Okay, how old were you when you started?
I started riding properly when I would have been 21, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's when I really got into it, when I moved to the lakes. Before that, like I said before, it's always like it was a way of life. Didn't really sort of take it too seriously. But yeah, I look at 16-year-olds now, and I know the kit was different, when I was 16, but if I look at 16-year-olds now and the amount of fun they're having, I just think, I spent my time in like nightclubs and things like that. I'm sort of semi-embarrassed to say it, but I spent a lot of money going to like Fabric in London and things like that, and actually I should have probably just bought a mountain bike and experienced the good times sooner.
All good. All right, next one. If you could have a coaching session from anyone, past or present, who would it be and what would you want to learn from them? And it doesn't have to be like a mountain bike thing. It could be a life thing or a totally different skill.
Like there's a guy who I've gained a huge amount of respect for over the last few years, and it's Andy McKenna. I mean, we're in a similar situation where he's got multiple sclerosis. He's also sort of sat on a ticking time bomb. For him, it's getting more and more difficult to ride bikes. But whenever I go and see him and we chew the fat, I always find that he gives me a different perspective on how I should look at things. And it might not be in terms of like skills coaching, but certainly kind of like life coaching. I think the guy's got a lot to offer for sure.
Are there any particular little techniques or thoughts that Andy's given you that you found really helps? Or anything that stands out from your time with Andy?
Yeah, don't sweat the small stuff, I suppose. Like I remember when you walk in their house and it just feels really relaxed, if that makes sense. I think sometimes we can get a little bit too worked up about trying to get everything right and making sure the house is clean, the kids are sorted and stuff. And, in that regard, I think Andy is a lot more horizontal than I am. And actually, I don't think that's a bad thing. He hasn't said it in as many words, to be honest, and he'll probably chuckle if he hears this. But yeah, no, I remember when I last visited him, we had a chat about it, and he was like, yeah, we just ignored all of that, now we're just focusing on living the good times. And I thought, you know what? Good on you. Fair shout.
Yeah. Nice way to look at things. All right, last one. What do you do every day that you feel benefits you?
Should have come prepared to this, shouldn't I, Chris?
It's all good.
I don't do it every day, but I make time to take the kids to school when I can, and just that little thing of having that routine of spending time with them, I think is really important. They're young, they're growing up quickly, and I mean, sometimes it can be hellishly stressful trying to get them sorted in time for school. But then sometimes, when they go in and they're like super cheerful and excited to see their friends, and they basically skip to school, it makes me start my day with a smile on my face. So yeah, that goes a long way for sure.
Nice. Sounds pretty good to me, man. Well, it's been inspiring and really interesting to hear your story. I'm really excited to see how rider resilience progresses. If people want to find out more, where would the best places be for them to look? So I guess we've got Instagram, website, YouTube.
Totally. Yeah. So, the best thing, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on the various podcast channels that are available as well, whatever service you use. And then, the website, we're trying to keep that up to date as well with blog posts, but the other channels should link you back to that if there's a new blog post anyway. So, cool. Absolutely. That would be a great place to start.
Perfect. We shall make sure we put a whole host of links to all of that stuff in the show notes. I'll stick a link into the original Rider Resilience film because that's a good watch. Any update on when the new film will be available? Do you know when you're likely to launch that?
Originally, it was going to be late spring, but what we're trying to do, because I'm always banging on about dawn raids and getting out, at the crack of dawn when the sun's rising, we felt like we should really include that as part of the film. So I'm basically watching the forecast like a hawk every day, trying to find this slot when it looks settled and it looks good, and we can go in and enjoy our little weather window. So it's probably going to be, we're looking at summertime now. I would have thought, yeah. And then it'll depend a little bit on Jacob's schedule as well. But I mean, we're just still shooting the second half locally, and then once that's done, we shouldn't be too far off.
Great, good stuff. I guess if people subscribe to the channels, they'll see that when it comes out. So
totally, absolutely,
perfect. Well, Nils, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I say, I look forward to seeing Rider Resilience grow and become full with incredible stories like your own.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for your time. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you today.